What separates the unshakable from the easily shaken? Think about the people in your life or throughout history who seem to carry an unbreakable calm, no matter what storms rage around them. They don't crumble under pressure, they don't fold in the face of chaos, they stand firm, rooted in something deeper. And here's the truth most people miss: that strength wasn't handed to them at birth. It was built brick by brick through deliberate practice. Stoicism, the ancient philosophy that stood the test of time, teaches us that mental resilience isn't a gift reserved for the lucky few. It's a skill anyone can cultivate. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, put it perfectly: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That power isn't innate. It's forged through daily rituals, through choices that train the mind to remain steady when everything else feels like it's falling apart. This isn't about pretending hardship doesn't exist or numbing yourself to emotion. It's about developing a mindset that meets adversity head-on without being consumed by it. Imagine facing setbacks, criticism, or even outright failure with the same calm as a mountain weathering a storm, unmoved, unwavering. That's the promise of Stoicism, and it's not some abstract ideal. It's a practical, actionable path to becoming someone who can't be shaken, no matter how hard life tries. The rituals we'll explore today aren't just theories. They're tools used by history's most resilient figures, from warriors to leaders to everyday people who refuse to be broken by circumstance. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed, uncertain, or like the world is testing your limits, this is for you. Because the difference between those who bend and those who stand firm isn't luck or genetics, it's practice. It's the small, consistent choices that train the mind to find clarity in chaos, to act rather than react, to turn obstacles into fuel. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into the exact mental rituals that build this unshakable core. These aren't quick fixes or empty motivational slogans. They're time-tested principles that have shaped some of the most formidable minds in history. By the end, you'll walk away with more than just knowledge. You'll have a blueprint to start forging your own resilience, one day at a time. So let's begin. The way you begin your morning shapes everything that follows. It's the foundation of an unshakable mindset. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, knew this well. Every morning, before the world could demand his attention, he would sit in quiet reflection, asking himself one powerful question: what challenge will I overcome today? This wasn't just about planning his day, it was about preparing his mind. He understood that resilience starts the moment you wake up, long before life throws its first curveball. Imagine facing a crisis with a mind already grounded in purpose. That's the advantage of morning reflection. Epictetus put it bluntly: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Your first thoughts set the trajectory for your entire day. If they're scattered or reactive, you'll spend hours playing catch-up. But if they're deliberate, focused, rooted in what you can control, you build a buffer against chaos. This isn't just ancient wisdom, modern psychology backs it up. Studies show that journaling for just 5 minutes each morning reduces stress and sharpens decision-making. Think of it as mental armor. When you take time to clarify your intentions, to acknowledge what's within your power and what isn't, you're not just writing words, you're training your brain to default to calm instead of panic. Consider the CEO who starts her day listing 3 priorities before checking email, or the athlete who visualizes success before stepping onto the field. They're not hoping for resilience, they're creating it one morning at a time. So ask yourself, what's the first thought you cultivate each morning? Is it a reaction to notifications, to other people's demands, or is it something you've chosen? The unshakable don't leave their mental state to chance. They design it, and the ritual is simpler than you might think. Just a few minutes of stillness, a pen and paper, and the courage to ask, what will I focus on today, no matter what tries to distract me? That's how you turn morning reflection from a habit into a superpower. What if you could face your greatest fears before they ever happened? Not with anxiety, but with calm preparation. The Stoics called this practice Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. It wasn't about dwelling on negativity, but about stripping adversity of its power by rehearsing it in advance. Take Seneca, who was exiled to Corsica under brutal conditions. While others would have crumbled, he thrived. Why? Because he had already lived through that exile in his mind countless times. He wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." That's the essence of this ritual. When you visualize challenges beforehand, they lose their ability to shock you. Think of it like a fire drill. No one panics during practice because they've walked through the steps 100 times. The Stoics applied this same logic to life's upheavals, loss, failure, criticism. By mentally rehearsing these scenarios, they built a reflex of steadiness. Modern athletes use this same technique. A basketball player doesn't wait for the championship game to imagine taking the final shot. They've already made it 1,000 times in their head. That's why when the pressure comes, their hands don't shake. They've been there before. Here's how to put this into practice today. Pick one challenge you're avoiding or fearing, a difficult conversation, a career setback, even personal loss. Now close your eyes and walk through it step by step, not as a victim, but as someone who remains composed and resourceful. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And how would I respond? When you do this, something remarkable occurs. The monster under the bed becomes just a shadow. You've already faced it in your mind, so when reality tests you, you're not caught off guard. You're ready. This isn't pessimism, it's empowerment. The unshakable don't wait for storms to learn how to sail. They've already charted the course. So what's the challenge you'll rehearse overcoming today? Because the more you practice standing firm in your imagination, the easier it becomes to do it in real life. Some things are up to us and some things are not. That simple truth from Epictetus cuts to the heart of what makes someone unshakable: the ability to distinguish between what's within your power and what isn't. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, and it's not just philosophy. It's a lifeline in a world that constantly tries to pull your attention in 1,000 directions. Picture this: you've spent weeks preparing a crucial presentation at work, only for technical issues to derail it halfway through. The colleague who interrupts, the client who seems disengaged, none of that was ever yours to control. But your preparation, your ability to adapt in the moment, that's where your power lies. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. Notice he doesn't say to ignore the uncontrollable or pretend it doesn't exist. He says accept it fully, so you can redirect your energy toward what actually responds to your efforts. The modern world bombards us with illusions of control. We stress over traffic, over other people's opinions, over outcomes that depend on countless variables we'll never influence. Meanwhile, the unshakable focus on the one thing that always belongs to them, their response. Here's the practice that changes everything. Take a moment to list what's truly yours to command. Your actions, your judgments, your effort, these are your domain. Everything else, the weather, the past, how others perceive you, that's not just outside your control. Clinging to it drains the strength you could use to make a real difference. Ask yourself right now, what are you wasting energy trying to control? The promotion you're angling for, the argument you want to win, Even the goals you've set but can't fully dictate, these aren't failures if they don't go your way. They're simply reminders to invest in what you can shape. This isn't passivity, it's precision. The most resilient people aren't indifferent to external results. They just know better than to stake their peace of mind on them. When a storm hits, they don't rage against the wind, they adjust their sails. That's the power of the dichotomy. It turns frustration into focus, chaos into clarity. Because when you stop fighting battles you are never meant to win, you discover an incredible truth. You've had everything you needed to stand firm all along. What if every obstacle in your path wasn't just something to endure, but something to embrace? Nietzsche, the philosopher who famously declared amor fati, or love of fate, borrowed this idea directly from the Stoics. It's not about passive resignation, it's about active acceptance, even gratitude for whatever life throws your way. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's the heart of amor fati, seeing every setback, every twist of fate, not as a detour from your path, but as part of the path itself. Take the story of Thomas Edison. When his lab burned to the ground, destroying years of irreplaceable work, he didn't collapse under the weight of the loss. He stood in the ashes and said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." That's amor fati in action. The fire could have broken him. Instead, it became fuel. The Stoics understood this alchemy, the power to transform hardship into advantage. When you stop resisting what you can't change and start asking, "How can this serve me?" you unlock a resilience that can't be shaken. This mindset shift isn't just philosophical, it's intensely practical. Think about a recent challenge you faced: a job rejection, a health scare, a relationship strain. What if instead of asking, "Why me?" you asked, "What's this teaching me?" The unshakable don't see themselves as victims of circumstance, they see themselves as students of it. A storm isn't just a storm, it's a test of your preparation. A failure isn't just a failure, it's data for your next attempt. Even pain becomes a teacher when you stop fighting it and start listening. So here's the question to carry with you today. What difficulty in your life right now could you reframe as necessary? Because amor fati isn't about pretending life is easy. It's about recognizing that the very things that seem to oppose you might be the ones shaping you into someone who can't be moved. When you stop cursing the wind and learn to adjust your sails, you don't just survive the storm, you become the kind of person who thrives in it. Marcus Aurelius had a nightly ritual that put everything into perspective. He would close his eyes and imagine viewing Earth from high above, not just from a mountaintop, but from the stars themselves. He called this taking the cosmic view, and it wasn't just poetic imagery, it was a mental reset button. From that vantage point, empires looked like specks, wars like fleeting shadows, and personal struggles like grains of sand in an endless desert. He wrote in his journal, "Think of the substance of the whole, how small your share of it is. Think of the span of time, how brief and momentary your slice is." That's the power of the view from above. It doesn't erase your problems, but it reveals their true scale. Consider the last time you felt consumed by frustration. Maybe a delayed flight, a rude comment, or a project setback. Now imagine watching that moment play out from space. How significant would it look against the backdrop of oceans, continents, and centuries? Seneca echoed this when he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The argument that feels world-ending today will likely be forgotten next month. The rejection that stings now might one day be the reason you found a better path. The unshakable don't ignore their emotions, they just refuse to let temporary storms define their entire sky. Here's how to practice this today. When stress starts to tighten its grip, pause and zoom out. Picture Earth as a pale blue dot suspended in vast darkness. On that dot are billions of people, each with their own struggles and triumphs. Your challenge, no matter how heavy it feels, is just one thread in that tapestry. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years or even 5 months? Space isn't just a metaphor. Astronauts who have seen Earth from orbit often describe a profound shift called the overview effect. They return with a visceral understanding of how fragile and interconnected life truly is. You don't need a rocket to experience this. You just need the willingness to step back. So the next time you're caught in the weeds of daily frustration, remember the stars. They've watched civilizations rise and fall, yet they remain unmoved. Your worries are real, but they're not infinite. And when you learn to see them as part of something larger, you gain the one thing no obstacle can take from you: perspective. That's the secret of the view from above. It doesn't make life's challenges disappear. It just reminds you how small they are in the story you're here to tell. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You wake up tomorrow and the electricity is gone. Not just for an hour permanently. No lights, no refrigerator humming in the kitchen, no charged phone buzzing with notifications. Now imagine something deeper. The people you love most aren't there when you reach for them. Your health, your freedom, even your ability to walk outside unassisted, all vanished overnight. This jarring exercise isn't meant to frighten you. It's the Stoic practice of negative visualization, and it holds a paradoxical power. By intentionally imagining the loss of what we cherish, we strip away the numbness of familiarity and rediscover the extraordinary in the ordinary. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, put it bluntly: when you kiss your child good night, remind yourself that you're kissing a mortal, not to dwell on darkness but to heighten the light. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew centuries ago. Our brains adapt to blessings at lightning speed. That first sip of coffee in the morning, the comfort of a bed, the presence of someone who texts just to check in. We stop seeing these as gifts and start treating them as entitlements. Negative visualization breaks that trance. Think of how astronauts describe seeing Earth from space for the first time, the overwhelming awe at its fragility and beauty. They didn't need to lose the planet to appreciate it. They just needed to confront the possibility. Here's how this plays out in real life. A CEO who built her company from nothing makes it a habit to walk through the empty office at night. She imagines the desks vacant, the phones silent, not out of fear, but to reignite her gratitude for the team that fills that space by day. Or consider the musician who nearly lost his hearing, only to find each note afterward vibrating with new meaning. The Stoics weren't suggesting we live in constant dread of loss. They were teaching us to use that awareness as a lens to sharpen focus on what matters. So try this today. Pick one thing you barely notice anymore: the ability to see sunlight through trees, the sound of laughter in your home, even the convenience of clean water from a tap. Now close your eyes and picture it gone. When you reopen them, that ordinary thing won't feel so ordinary anymore, because gratitude isn't just saying thank you, it's waking up to the reality that everything you love is on loan. And the more deeply you feel that truth, the more fiercely you'll cherish what's in front of you right now. Cato the Younger, one of history's most unyielding Stoics, didn't just preach resilience, he lived it. In the heart of Rome's opulence, he chose to wear coarse, simple clothing. He walked barefoot in cold weather. He even made a habit of bathing in frigid water, not because he enjoyed discomfort, but because he understood something profound. Comfort weakens, while deliberate hardship fortifies. Musonius Rufus, another Stoic teacher, put it plainly: how can anyone become brave if they only seek what feels easy? He compared mental resilience to athletic training. No one develops strength without resistance. The principle is simple yet transformative. By voluntarily embracing small hardships, we inoculate ourselves against life's inevitable larger ones. Think of this as mental cross-training. Just as athletes push their physical limits to grow stronger, the Stoics pushed their comfort zones to build unwavering resilience. Modern life, with its endless conveniences, has made us softer than we realize. The constant drip of notifications, the ease of ordering food with a tap, the expectation of instant gratification, these aren't just conveniences, they're silent eroders of our ability to endure. But here's the good news: you don't need to sleep on a stone floor or give up all technology to reclaim that strength. Start small. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Leave your phone at home for an afternoon. Try a day without caffeine. These might seem trivial, but they're micro-rebellions against a culture that equates comfort with happiness. Musonius Rufus taught that voluntary discomfort isn't about punishment, it's about reclaiming agency. When you choose hardship, you strip adversity of its power to surprise or destabilize you. Consider the CEO who takes cold showers to practice embracing discomfort before high-stakes meetings, or the parent who occasionally fasts to remind themselves that hunger won't break them. These aren't acts of deprivation, they're rehearsals for resilience, because when life eventually forces hardship upon you, a missed promotion, a health scare, a loss, you won't be meeting it for the first time. You'll have already stood toe-to-toe with discomfort and learned you can withstand it. So here's a challenge: what comfort could you temporarily set aside this week? Maybe it's turning off the AC on a warm night to practice tolerating minor annoyance, or resisting the urge to check social media during downtime, training your mind to sit with stillness. The goal isn't to suffer needlessly, it's to prove to yourself that you're more adaptable than you think, because the unshakable aren't immune to discomfort, they've just learned to wear it like an old coat. And every time you voluntarily step into hardship, you're stitching that coat tighter, thread by thread, until nothing life throws at you can pierce through. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." At the core of this idea lies the discipline of assent, the Stoic practice of pausing before accepting your first impressions as truth. Think of your mind as a courtroom where every thought that enters must be examined before you give it the gavel's bang of approval. Most of our distress doesn't come from events themselves, but from the unchecked judgments we attach to them. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." That's the power of assent. It creates a buffer between what happens and how you choose to respond. Take road rage as an example. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instantly your body tenses, your pulse races, you're already crafting a story about their incompetence or disrespect. But what if, instead of letting that narrative hijack your emotions, you paused? What if you considered that the driver might be rushing to the hospital or simply didn't see you? The event remains the same, but your suffering evaporates the moment you question the assumptions fueling it. The Stoics called this stepping back, creating space between stimulus and response, where your freedom to choose resides. This discipline isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about interrogating them. When a colleague's email feels terse, do you assume malice, or could they just be pressed for time? When plans fall through, do you spiral into frustration, or is there an opportunity hidden in the detour? Every day we encounter dozens of these mental crossroads, and the Unshakable recognize them for what they are: chances to exercise sovereignty over their inner world. So here's a challenge. Recall a recent moment when a quick assumption amplified your distress. Maybe a friend's delayed reply made you feel ignored, or a missed deadline sent you into self-criticism. Now rewind and ask what other explanations exist. What part of this reaction is truly within your control? The discipline of assent turns automatic reactions into conscious choices. And in that pause, that sacred space between what happens and what you decide it means, you'll find the quiet strength of someone who can't be shaken. The ancient Stoics had a striking tradition. They kept a human skull on their dinner table. Not as a morbid fascination, but as a visceral reminder. Memento mori, remember you must die. At first glance, this seems dark, even unsettling. But peel back the layers and you'll find one of history's most powerful tools for clarity and courage. Seneca wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He wasn't obsessing over death. He was using its inevitability to magnify life's urgency. Imagine waking each morning with the quiet certainty that this day could be your last, not as a threat but as a lens, a way to distinguish what truly matters from what merely clamors for attention. Modern culture treats death like an unplugged fire alarm in the distance, something to ignore until it's screaming in our faces. We fill our days with distractions, numb ourselves with busyness, and tiptoe around the one truth that could set us free: our time is finite. The unshakable don't run from this reality, they lean into it. Steve Jobs, in his famous Stanford commencement speech, said it plainly: "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." That's the paradox of memento mori. It doesn't paralyze, it propels. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start acting like you have today. Consider how differently you'd approach your relationships if you knew goodbye was near. The petty arguments, the grudges, the unsaid appreciation, they'd vanish in an instant. Or your work, would you still tolerate meaningless tasks, or would you demand projects that ignite you? Even leisure transforms under this light. That extra hour scrolling becomes an hour spent learning, creating, or connecting. The Stoics didn't dwell on death to depress themselves. They used it to distill life to its essence. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. Here's the question to sit with today. If this were your last year, what would you stop tolerating? What would you finally start, not in some distant someday, but now? Because the skull on the table isn't there to scare you, it's there to wake you. To remind you that every moment you waste complaining, hesitating, or waiting for permission is a moment you'll never reclaim. The unshakable don't need near-death experiences to realign their priorities. They carry that awareness with them like a compass in their pocket, steering them toward what's real. And when you do the same, something extraordinary happens. You stop living as if you're immortal and start living as if you're alive. Demosthenes, one of ancient Greece's greatest orators, began his journey with a crippling obstacle, a speech impediment so severe his words would stumble and collapse before reaching his audience. Mocked and dismissed, he could have accepted defeat. Instead, he turned his weakness into his training ground. Legend says he filled his mouth with pebbles and practiced speaking over the roar of the ocean, forcing his voice to rise above the waves. What others saw as a flaw became the very thing that forged his legendary eloquence. This is the alchemy of resilience, the refusal to see barriers as dead ends, but as raw material for reinvention. Marcus Aurelius captured it perfectly. The fire that melts gold strengthens it. Adversity doesn't destroy the unshakable, it tempers them, revealing strengths they never knew they had. Consider the startup founder whose first venture collapsed spectacularly. Investors walked away, the team disbanded, and the industry labeled him a failure. But in those ashes, he discovered something invaluable, a clarity about what truly mattered. His next venture didn't just succeed, it revolutionized its field. Years later, he'd say that the collapse was the best thing that ever happened to him. Without it, he'd have kept building on shaky foundations. The obstacle wasn't just overcome, it became the compass that pointed him toward a better path. This mindset shift isn't about blind optimism. It's about recognizing that every challenge carries hidden leverage. A broken bone teaches patience. A betrayal reveals who truly stands with you. Even a global pandemic forced millions to discover untapped creativity and resilience. The unshakable don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What is this revealing about me, and how can I use it?" So look at the obstacle in front of you right now. That project that stalled, that skill you're struggling to master, that rejection that stung. What if it's not a blockade but a detour to something better? The road to greatness isn't smooth pavement. It's littered with rocks that become stepping stones when you choose to see them that way. The question isn't whether you'll face adversity. It's whether you'll let it define you or refine you. Marcus Aurelius gazed at the night sky and wrote, "Rational beings exist for one another." In those 6 words, he captured a truth that modern science now confirms: we are wired for connection. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the profound interdependence of all things. Picture an ancient oak tree. Its strength doesn't come from standing alone, but from an invisible network of roots intertwined with other trees, sharing nutrients and warnings of danger. Human resilience works the same way. Isolation breeds fragility, connection builds unshakable strength. When Hierocles taught his famous circles of concern, he didn't just mean to care about others, he revealed a survival strategy. Your well-being radiates outward like rings in water, from self to family to community to humanity. The wider those circles stretch, the more anchors you have when storms hit. Think of a championship sports team. No player, no matter how skilled, lifts the trophy alone. The point guard's court vision means nothing without the shooter's precision. The striker's goal depends on the defender's tackle. Even the star athlete who seems to carry the team is leaning on coaches, physios, and decades of collective knowledge. Now apply that to your life. Who's passing you the ball when you're too weary to shoot? Who's covering for you when you're out of position? Resilience isn't a solo act, it's a chorus. The unshakable know this intimately. They don't just endure because of their discipline, they endure because they're part of something larger than themselves. This isn't abstract philosophy. Studies show social bonds reduce stress hormones and boost immune function. Soldiers in units with strong camaraderie survive POW camps at higher rates. Cancer patients in support groups often outlive statistical predictions. Your nervous system literally calms when you feel connected. It's why a single reassuring handshake can steady your pulse before a big presentation. The Stoics understood this centuries before fMRI scans. We're not just social creatures by preference, we're social creatures by biological design. Fragmentation is what weakens us. So here's a question to sit with today. Who strengthens your resilience simply by existing? Maybe it's the friend who listens without fixing, the colleague whose optimism is contagious, or even the stranger whose small kindness reminded you that goodness persists. Write their names down, then ask yourself, how can you widen your circles? How can you be someone else's anchor? Because sympatheia isn't just about receiving support, it's about recognizing that your steadfastness isn't yours alone. It's a thread in a tapestry woven by everyone who's ever believed in you, challenged you, or shown you what endurance looks like. And that realization doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you unbreakable. Diogenes, the ancient philosopher who lived in a barrel, carried minimalism to its extreme, not as a stunt, but as a masterclass in freedom. When Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world, visited him and asked what he could give him, Diogenes simply replied, "Step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." That moment reveals a truth modern society often forgets. Strength isn't just about what we add to our lives, but what we dare to subtract. Seneca put it bluntly. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor. Wealth, in the Stoic sense, isn't measured by possessions, but by how much you can discard without feeling deprived. Consider the mental toll of clutter, not just physical junk, but the endless commitments, notifications, and trivial decisions that fracture our attention. Every yes to something unimportant is a no to what truly matters. The unshakable understand this arithmetic. They prune their lives like a gardener tending a vine, cutting away the excess so the essential can thrive. Ancient Sparta embraced this philosophy, stripping away luxury to forge warriors who could endure anything. Meanwhile, modern culture bombards us with messages to accumulate more gadgets, more followers, more hustle. Yet study after study shows that decision fatigue and choice overload erode willpower and focus. The paradox: by removing, we gain. Take Warren Buffett's famous strategy, writing down his top 25 career goals, then circling just 5. The other 20, he avoids them at all costs, not because they're bad, but because they're distractions from his highest priorities. Or consider Marie Kondo's question, does this spark joy? A modern echo of Stoic discernment. The art of subtraction isn't about austerity, it's about intentionality. When you eliminate the unnecessary, you create space for resilience to grow. So here's the challenge. What's one thing, physical, digital, or emotional, you could remove this week to reclaim mental bandwidth, that app draining your focus? The grudges weighing down your spirit, the meetings that could be emails. Every subtraction is an act of defiance against a world that equates busyness with importance. And when you practice this art consistently, you'll discover something remarkable. The less you carry, the farther you can go. Because the unshakable don't just withstand pressure, they create the conditions to rise above it. And sometimes that starts with emptying your hands so you can grasp what truly matters. Epictetus cut to the core of human suffering with a single razor-sharp observation. It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretations of them. That distinction between raw reality and the stories we layer onto it is the essence of objective representation. Imagine standing before a crowd to give a speech, your palms sweating, heart racing. The objective reality: you're simply breathing in a room while words leave your mouth. The mental filter: you've already constructed a catastrophe, stuttering, forgetting your lines, the audience's silent judgment. Marcus Aurelius called this out perfectly. Take away your opinion about what seems to give you pain, and you stand painless. The event itself is neutral. It's the "this is terrible" narrative we graft onto it that paralyzes us. This mental habit isn't just about public speaking. It's the email from your boss that you assume signals disapproval before even opening it. The quiet evening your partner spends reading that you interpret as emotional distance. The traffic jam that becomes proof the universe is against you. Each time, we're not reacting to the event, we're reacting to the horror movie our minds project onto a blank screen. Neuroscientists confirm this. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can't distinguish between real threats and vividly imagined ones. That's why your body reacts to a worried thought as if it were a physical danger. The Stoic solution isn't to suppress emotions, but to dissect them. When anxiety spikes, ask, what are the facts here? What's actually within my control? A job rejection is just a no, not a verdict on your worth. A rainy wedding day is weather, not fate's cruelty. The more you practice stripping away the layers of interpretation, the clearer reality becomes. Consider how firefighters train. They don't enter burning buildings imagining worst-case scenarios. They see flames, exits, and tools, nothing more. That clarity lets them act decisively amid chaos. So here's the challenge. What situation in your life right now seems worse through your mental filter? Maybe it's an upcoming medical checkup you've turned into a looming disaster, or a financial hiccup you've inflated into ruin. Write down the bare facts, then list the stories you've added. The gap between those two lists is where your power lies, because when you stop confusing reality with your fears about it, you don't just reduce suffering, you uncover the calm, capable person who's been there all along. The one who knows that even in a storm, the sky above the clouds is always clear. Seneca prepared for sea voyages by packing his belongings with a caveat: if the ship makes it. This wasn't pessimism, it was wisdom. The Stoics called it the reserve clause, a simple but profound practice. Add fate permitting to every plan, every ambition, every expectation. Epictetus framed it sharply. When you set your heart on something, remind yourself what kind of thing it is. That cancelled vacation you've been counting down to. The promotion you're banking on, the flawless execution of your project, none are guaranteed. The unshakable don't just make plans, they make plans with open hands, holding them loosely enough to let go if circumstances demand. Take the modern equivalent, a flight cancellation. You've got a crucial meeting in another city, your presentation's polished, your bags packed. Then the airline's notification pings, weather delay, no alternatives. The average person spirals into frustration, ranting at gate agents or drowning in self-pity. But the Stoic, they already factored this possibility in. They've got materials accessible offline, a backup call scheduled, maybe even a quiet hour in the airport lounge to rethink their approach. The plan wasn't fly at noon, it was fly at noon, weather permitting. That tiny mental shift transforms disappointment into adaptability. This mindset isn't about lowering standards, it's about raising resilience. Consider the farmer who plants seeds with the whispered addition: if the rains come. They still till the soil with care, but their peace isn't mortgaged to outcomes they can't control. Or the athlete who trains relentlessly while acknowledging, if my body holds up. The reserve clause isn't a disclaimer of effort, it's a declaration of sovereignty over your inner state. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily, writing, "The cucumber is bitter. Then throw it out, there are brambles in the path, then go around. That's all you need to know. No drama, no despair, just recalibration." So here's the question to sit with today. What plan are you treating as absolute that isn't? That relationship you assume will last forever, the career trajectory you've mapped in ink, even the assumption that tomorrow will mirror today, these aren't promises. They're possibilities. When you pencil in fate permitting, you're not inviting misfortune, you're inoculating yourself against surprise, because the unshakable know the secret. Real power lies not in controlling life's currents, but in adjusting your sails the moment the wind changes. And that kind of flexibility doesn't weaken resolve, it makes it unbreakable. Thracia sat calmly as Nero's soldiers burst into his home, their swords drawn. The emperor had ordered his execution, but the Stoic philosopher's demeanor never wavered. When one soldier hesitated, Thracia pointed to his own throat and said, "Would you like to see a proper sacrifice?" In that moment, with death at his doorstep, he demonstrated a truth the Stoics held sacred. The only thing we truly own is our character. Everything else, wealth, reputation, even our bodies, can be taken in an instant. But our virtue, that remains ours to command until our last breath. Epictetus drove this home. No one can steal your ability to choose wisely. That's your fortress. Modern society ties identity to external markers, job titles, social media followers, possessions that gather dust. Strip those away, and many feel like strangers to themselves. But the Stoics asked a more revealing question: Who are you when the world stops applauding? When the bank account empties, the spotlight fades, or the uniform gets put away for good? The unshakable build their sense of self on something far deeper. Consider the athlete who loses their career to injury but discovers a passion for coaching, or the executive who steps down only to find fulfillment in mentoring. Their worth wasn't in the role, it was in how they inhabited it. This distinction between self and circumstance is the bedrock of resilience. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire yet wrote, "You could be good today." Instead, you choose tomorrow. Even with limitless power, he measured himself by his choices, not his crown. Contrast that with today's culture, where layoffs trigger identity crises and retirement feels like erasure. The Stoic alternative: define yourself by what no market crash can touch: your integrity, your curiosity, your capacity to adapt. So here's the thought experiment to sit with. If you lost everything tomorrow, your job, your status, even your name, what core would remain? Not the accolades on your shelf, but the principles in your bones. Because when you anchor yourself there, you become like Thracia in Nero's court, unarmed yet unconquerable. The world may take your possessions, but it can never take your choice to meet whatever comes with dignity. And that's the kind of wealth that never depreciates. Cato the Younger stood motionless as his opponent spat in his face. The crowd gasped, waiting for the famed Stoic's rage to erupt, but it never came. Instead, he wiped his cheek and continued his speech as if nothing had happened. That moment wasn't just about restraint, it was a masterclass in what the Stoics called the pause, that critical sliver of time between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. Seneca described anger as a brief madness, entirely preventable if we could just stretch that pause a little longer. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. The amygdala, our brain's alarm system, fires in milliseconds, but the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, takes a full 10 seconds to fully engage. That gap is where your power lies. Think about the last time you fired off a reactive text in anger or snapped at someone under stress. In hindsight, you likely regretted not waiting those few extra seconds. Now imagine inserting a deliberate pause, not to suppress emotion, but to let reason catch up. A CEO facing a hostile takeover bid doesn't respond to the first lowball offer. A surgeon doesn't make an incision the moment the scalpel touches skin. They pause, recalibrate, then act. The Stoics understood this discipline at its core. Reaction is instinct, but response is choice. Here's how this plays out in everyday life. Your partner leaves dishes in the sink again. The immediate thought, they don't respect me. But with a 10-second pause, just long enough to take 3 deep breaths, you might recall they've been working late all week. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your jaw clenches, but instead of interrupting, you pause just long enough to notice your grip tightening on the pen. That physical cue becomes a signal, time to step back. The unshakable aren't devoid of emotion. They've just trained themselves to widen the space where wisdom can enter. So where could you insert a pause today? Maybe it's waiting 5 full seconds before answering a provocative question, or walking to the water cooler before replying to that irritating email. Like a chess player who refuses to move until they've seen 3 steps ahead, you're not avoiding action, you're ensuring it's worthy of you. Because in that sliver of silence between impulse and action, you'll find something remarkable, the version of yourself who knows exactly what to do. Marcus Aurelius had a simple but powerful exercise he used when emotions threatened to overwhelm him. Ask, what is this in its essence? He wasn't dismissing his feelings, he was measuring them against reality. A delayed train isn't a personal attack. A rude comment isn't a life-altering event. Yet how often do we react as if they are? Epictetus saw this clearly. Man is not disturbed by things, but by the views he takes of them. We suffer not because life is unfair, but because we've confused preferences with necessities, inconveniences with emergencies. Picture this: you're rushing to an important meeting, and someone bumps into you, sending your coffee splashing across your shirt. The heat stings, the stain spreads, and instantly your body tenses, your pulse races. You're not just annoyed, you're furious, but pause for a moment. What actually happened? A liquid changed the color of fabric. That's the essence. The rest, the imagined judgment from colleagues, the story you're telling yourself about clumsiness or bad luck. That's the mental noise amplifying a minor event into a major crisis. The Stoics called this proportional response, the discipline of matching your reaction to the true weight of what's occurred. Modern life bombards us with triggers designed to hijack our attention. A notification buzzes and we react like it's a fire alarm. A critical email arrives and our stomach knots as if it's a life or death verdict. These aren't just overreactions, they're energy leaks. Think of a gardener watering weeds with the same care as roses. Soon, the whole garden is choked. Every unnecessary emotional expenditure drains reserves you might need for real challenges. So here's the challenge: recall a recent annoyance that hijacked your calm. Maybe it was traffic, a misplaced key, or a coworker's thoughtless remark. Now strip it down to its essence. How much of your distress came from the event itself, and how much from the narrative you layered onto it? The unshakable don't ignore life's friction. They just refuse to pour gasoline on every spark. Because when you save your strongest reactions for what truly deserves them, you'll always have enough fire left to light the way forward. Marcus Aurelius described a sanctuary that no army could breach, not a physical fortress, but what he called the inner citadel. In his private writings, he spoke of retreating into this space at will, where external chaos couldn't penetrate. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul, he wrote. This wasn't escapism, it was the ultimate act of sovereignty. Picture a medieval castle with towering walls. The outer courtyards might be overrun, but the keep at the center remains untouched. That's the Stoic ideal, a mental stronghold so well constructed that no insult, failure, or misfortune can rattle its foundations. Epictetus took this further with his image of the impregnable self. He taught that while others might control your body or possessions, your judgments and values remain yours alone. Build a little fence around your mind, he advised, creating boundaries against the torrent of opinions and distractions that demand your attention. In an age where notifications constantly breach those fences, this discipline feels almost revolutionary. The average person checks their phone over 100 times a day, their mind perpetually colonized by external demands. The Unshakable, by contrast, cultivate zones of silence where no algorithm has voting rights. Consider the modern worker who starts her day not by reaching for her phone, but by sitting with her thoughts for 5 uninterrupted minutes. Or the parent who carves out a nightly ritual: no screens, just reflection before sleep. These aren't just habits, they are acts of resistance against a world that profits from fractured attention. Psychologists call this cognitive detachment, the ability to mentally disengage from stressors. The Stoics framed it as something grander, the deliberate construction of a sacred interior space where you alone hold the keys. So where's your inner citadel? Not the curated version you present online, but the space where no likes or criticisms echo. Maybe it's the early morning walk where your thoughts untangle, the journal page where you confront unfiltered truths, or even the shower where ideas flow freely. The location doesn't matter. What matters is that it exists and that you return to it often. Because when you have a refuge that no external storm can flood, you carry unshakable calm wherever you go. Not as a theory, but as lived reality. Seneca once cautioned his students against becoming prisoners of their own preparation, writing, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive, but also their lessons." There's a paradox at play here. While readiness steels us against adversity, over-planning can leave us brittle when life inevitably deviates from the script. Think of a tree that's grown in a perfectly controlled greenhouse. Its roots never learn to anchor against real wind. Its branches never toughen under true storms. The Stoics understood that resilience isn't just about foreseeing every challenge. It's about developing the capacity to meet whatever comes. Epictetus put it sharply, "Don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you'll go on well." Military training offers a striking example. Recruits spend months drilling for combat scenarios, yet the most critical skill they learn isn't marksmanship or tactics, it's adaptability. A soldier who's memorized every textbook maneuver but freezes when ambushed from an unexpected direction is less effective than one who's trained to think on their feet. Special Forces units deliberately introduce chaos into exercises, changing mission parameters mid-operation, cutting off supply lines unexpectedly, because they know real resilience isn't found in flawless plans, but in the ability to recalibrate when those plans shatter. This principle applies far beyond the battlefield. Consider two entrepreneurs. One obsessively refines a business plan for years, waiting for perfect conditions, while the other launches with a prototype, learning from each customer complaint and market shift. The second doesn't just survive uncertainty, they're strengthened by it. Even in relationships, couples who have scripted every milestone in their heads often struggle when life delivers surprises, while those who have practiced navigating small disagreements fluidly build marriages that bend without breaking. So where are you over-planning instead of cultivating flexibility? That meticulous career roadmap might be blinding you to unexpected opportunities. The parenting strategy you've researched down to the minute could leave you unprepared for your child's unique needs. Even your morning routine, if rigidly enforced, might crumble the first time a flat tire or sick child disrupts it. The unshakable don't abandon preparation. They simply leave room for life's improvisations. Because true resilience isn't about controlling every variable. It's about trusting your ability to dance with the ones you can't. Musonius Rufus taught his students a radical lesson about hunger, not just the physical kind, but the deeper craving for more that never seems satisfied. He would deliberately serve plain meals, sometimes just bread and water, then observe who complained. His point wasn't about food. It was about mastering the instinct to always seek something richer, something better. The person who trains their appetite, he said, trains their entire character, because desire isn't just what we want, it's the lens through which we see the world. A stomach accustomed to luxury sees scarcity everywhere, while one content with simplicity finds abundance in the most ordinary meal. This discipline cuts to the heart of Stoic freedom. Epictetus put it bluntly, freedom isn't secured by filling men's pockets with gold, but by emptying their hearts of desire. Imagine two prisoners, one pacing his cell, raging at the injustice, the other sitting quietly, reading a book smuggled in by a guard. The walls are the same, but their suffering isn't. The difference lies in what each man has chosen to want. The first demands freedom, the second has found it already, by wanting nothing beyond what's already within his reach. Now apply that to today's world of endless scrolling. You open your phone and within seconds, you're bombarded with images of tropical vacations, gleaming kitchens, curated lives that seem effortlessly perfect. That pang of envy isn't accidental, it's engineered by algorithms that thrive on manufactured discontent. The Stoic response, not to delete every app but to ask, is this desire serving me or enslaving me? A vacation isn't the problem, the belief that you can't be happy without one is. So here's the practice. Pick one desire that's been quietly driving your choices: the nicer car, the bigger title, even the validation of likes. Now strip it down to its essence. Is this want aligned with your deepest values, or is it a ghost you've been chasing because everyone else seems to? The unshakable don't suppress desires, they interrogate them. Because when you choose what to want, you reclaim something precious: the ability to enjoy what you already have. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties show what men are." That simple phrase holds a truth we often resist. The obstacles we curse are actually the anvils upon which our strength is forged. Think of a blacksmith shaping steel. Without the hammer's blows, the metal remains dull and unformed. The same principle applies to the mind. Marcus Aurelius called life the gymnasium of the soul, a place where every challenge, from petty irritations to seismic losses, exists not to break us but to train us. When a weightlifter's muscles tear under strain, they don't abandon the barbell. They understand those microscopic tears are what rebuild thicker fibers. Resilience works the same way. Consider the bamboo plant. In its early years, it shows almost no visible growth, all its energy directed underground, building an extensive root system. Then suddenly it shoots up 90 feet in weeks, able to withstand storms that topple mighty oaks. Your current struggles might feel like those hidden years, frustrating, seemingly fruitless. But what if they're not setbacks at all? What if they're the necessary groundwork for an unshakable foundation? The entrepreneur facing rejection after rejection isn't failing. She's building the emotional calluses that will let her persevere when competitors fold. The student grinding through late-night study sessions isn't just memorizing facts, they're conditioning their focus for future high-stakes decisions. This mindset flips adversity from enemy to ally. A sailor doesn't learn navigation on calm seas. A surgeon doesn't master steady hands during routine checkups. Growth demands friction. Even nature confirms it. Forests that endure strong winds develop deeper roots, and trees that weather droughts grow denser wood. Your struggles aren't proof of inadequacy. They're the curriculum of your becoming. So here's the question to sit with today. What challenge are you currently facing that might secretly be your Stoic test? That difficult coworker, the project that feels overwhelming, the financial squeeze. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this revealing about me?" Because the unshakable don't just endure trials, they recognize them as the truest measure of progress. And when you start seeing obstacles as the universe's way of asking, "How badly do you want this?" you'll find yourself standing taller in the face of every storm. Picture yourself 10 years from now, sitting across a coffee table from the person you are today. What advice would that wiser, calmer version of you offer about the problem currently weighing on your mind? That looming deadline, that strained relationship, that financial worry, seen through time's lens, how monumental would they really be? Seneca wrote, "Life is divided into 3 periods, past, present, and future. Of these, the present is short, the future uncertain, the past alone secure." He wasn't dismissing present struggles. He was reminding us that every chapter eventually closes, every storm eventually passes. Think back to a crisis that once felt all-consuming, a job loss, a breakup, a health scare. At the time, it might have felt like the sky was falling, but fast forward to now, how much of that pain still lingers? How many of those sleepless nights can you even recall in detail? Time has a way of sanding down the sharp edges of our suffering, leaving behind not the anguish itself, but the lessons it carried. Consider the college student who failed a crucial exam. convinced their future was ruined only to realize years later that it redirected them toward a path far better suited to their strengths. Or the entrepreneur whose bankruptcy became the foundation for a more resilient business philosophy. This isn't about minimizing present pain. It's about recognizing that our minds are like cameras, zoom in too close, and every grain of dust looks like a boulder. Pull back and the entire landscape comes into focus. The unshakable practice this shift intentionally. When anxiety tightens its grip, they ask, will this matter in a decade? If not, how much energy does it deserve today? The argument with a coworker that feels like a battle for respect might fade into a footnote. The rejection letter that stings now could become the catalyst for a pivot you'll later celebrate. So here's the exercise. Take your current challenge and project it onto the timeline of your life, not as a fleeting thought, but as a visceral exercise. Close your eyes and imagine your future self smiling gently at the intensity you're feeling right now. What would they tell you to hold on to? What would they urge you to release? Because the long view doesn't just shrink problems, it reveals which ones are actually worth carrying. And when you learn to borrow that perspective early, you carry less weight to begin with. Epictetus posed a simple but radical question to his students. If someone spoke ill of your body, would you feel insulted? If so, why do you then feel insulted when someone speaks ill of your mind? This exercise cuts to the heart of what makes opinions so powerful, not the words themselves, but the weight we choose to give them. Imagine standing on stage for a critical presentation. Your palms sweat not because of the words you'll speak, but because of the potential judgments forming in strangers' minds. Yet here's the paradox: those opinions exist only in your imagination until you breathe life into them. Marcus Aurelius observed this in his private writings. The noise of praise and blame is just that noise. It holds no more substance than the wind. We live in an age where opinions are amplified to deafening volumes. Social media transforms casual thoughts into permanent verdicts, where a single critical comment can overshadow 100 silent approvals. The Stoics recognized this dynamic centuries before the like button. They understood that seeking validation externally is like building a house on shifting sand. You'll spend your life chasing approval that evaporates as quickly as it arrives. Consider the artist who abandons bold, original work after one harsh critique, or the employee who molds themselves into someone unrecognizable to please a boss who'll forget their name in 5 years. Now picture two performers backstage before a show. One trembles at the thought of critics in the third row, imagining every possible flaw they might notice. The other focuses solely on the joy of singing, the craft they've honed for years. Both will face the same audience, but only one carries chains of their own making. The difference isn't talent, it's the choice to treat opinions as either shackles or background static. So pause and ask yourself, whose imagined judgment currently restricts you? The colleague whose respect you crave, the online stranger whose disapproval stings, even the vague they of societal expectations. The unshakable don't ignore feedback, they simply refuse to let it become their compass. Because when you stop outsourcing your self-worth, you discover something remarkable. The only opinion that ever truly confined you was the one you decided to believe. Pythagoras demanded 5 years of complete silence from his students before they could even ask questions. At first glance, this seems extreme until you realize what he was cultivating. Those years of quiet weren't about suppression. They were the forge where true listening took root. In the absence of their own voices, his students learned to hear the world with extraordinary depth. Seneca called this retiring into yourself, describing silence not as emptiness, but as fertile ground where clarity grows. He wrote, "You must give yourself time to withdraw and consider who you truly are. an idea that feels almost radical in our modern world of perpetual noise. Consider the difference between ancient and modern soundscapes. The average person in classical Rome might hear birds, distant conversations, perhaps the occasional cart rolling by. Today, the relentless hum of traffic, the ping of notifications, the overlapping streams of music, podcasts, and screens, our minds are under constant auditory siege. Neuroscientists call this cognitive load, the mental exhaustion caused by never-ending input. Every decibel demands processing power, leaving less energy for deep thought. The Unshakable understand this drain intimately. That's why figures like Newton spent hours walking alone in his garden, or why Kafka wrote in the dead of night when Prague fell silent. They weren't just avoiding distraction, they were safeguarding the conditions where insight blooms. Take the modern executive who schedules thinking hours, blocks of time where emails go unanswered, phones stay off, and the only sound is the scratch of pen on paper. Or the artist who begins each morning not with music or news, but with the quiet hum of a sunrise. These aren't quirky habits, they're deliberate defenses against a world that equates noise with productivity. Silence, in this context, becomes more than the absence of sound. It's the space where your mind stops reacting and starts creating. So here's the challenge. When did you last experience true silence? Not just the lack of talking, but the absence of all manufactured noise. No podcasts during your commute, no background TV while cooking, not even the subtle itch to check your phone. The Unshakable don't fear this void, they cultivate it, because in that quiet you'll hear something extraordinary, your own thoughts, undistorted by the static of the world. And that's where the deepest strength begins, not in the clamor of constant doing, but in the profound stillness of being. Two prisoners stare through the same set of iron bars. One sees only confinement, the other counts the stars visible between them. This ancient Stoic parable reveals a truth neuroscience now confirms. Our suffering isn't dictated by events, but by the meanings we assign them. Epictetus framed it with surgical precision. It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretations of them. That space between what happens and what we decide it means, that's where our freedom lies. Consider a job rejection letter. The paper itself is neutral, just ink on fiber. But the mind can transform it into proof of inadequacy or a redirection toward something better suited, or even a test of perseverance. The event doesn't change. The power lies in which narrative you choose to inhabit. Cognitive reframing isn't positive thinking, it's precision thinking. The Stoics didn't ignore reality. They examined it through multiple lenses to find the most useful perspective. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "The obstacle becomes the way." A flooded road isn't just a delay, it's an invitation to discover a new route. A rival's success isn't just a threat, it's evidence that similar heights are possible. Even pain serves a purpose. The athlete's sore muscles signal growth, not just fatigue. This mental alchemy transforms life's raw materials into strength. Take the entrepreneur whose product launch flops spectacularly. They could internalize it as personal failure, or they could dissect it objectively. The market feedback exposed flawed assumptions, saving years of misguided effort. The financial loss becomes tuition for an invaluable education. Ancient Stoics called this the Discipline of Assent, the practice of withholding judgment until you've examined all possible interpretations. Like a scientist considering multiple hypotheses, they refused to settle for the first explanation that sparked emotion. So here's the challenge. What current situation feels immovable because of how you framed it? That strained relationship, could the tension be highlighting unmet needs worth addressing? The financial setback, might it be pruning distractions to focus on what truly matters? The unshakable don't deny hardship, they simply refuse to let it dictate the story. Because when you own the interpretations, you own your power, and no external event can take that away without your consent. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Seneca would light a single lamp and open his journal, not to plan tomorrow, but to hold court with himself. His nightly ritual wasn't about tallying accomplishments or stewing in regrets. It was a measured excavation of the day's choices. When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, he wrote, I examine my entire day and measure my words and deeds. This wasn't self-interrogation, it was calibration. Like a blacksmith inspecting his tools for nicks and burrs, Seneca understood that small, daily refinements compound into unshakable character over time. Epictetus took this further, framing progress not in grand gestures but in microscopic adjustments. No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. The evening review is where that ripening happens. Imagine two runners. One finishes a race and collapses on the grass. The other walks a cool down lap, analyzing each stride. The second isn't just recovering, they're embedding lessons that will shave seconds off their next race. Modern research validates this ancient practice. Studies on reflective journaling show it strengthens metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking. A nurse reviewing a chaotic shift identifies patterns in her stress responses. A student dissecting a failed exam pinpoints not just knowledge gaps, but the overconfidence that created them. The key lies in specificity. Instead of asking, was today good or bad? A binary dead end asks Seneca's sharper questions. When did I act with courage today? Where did fear dictate my choices? What trivialities stole attention from what mattered? Here's how to adapt this tonight. Grab any notebook and divide the page into 3 columns. In the first, list actions that aligned with your core principles. Perhaps you listened deeply instead of interrupting, or chose integrity over convenience. The second holds missteps not to self-flagellate, but to spot behavioral moss growing where it shouldn't. The third is for tomorrow's single intentional adjustment, not a lofty resolution, but a tactical tweak. Maybe it's pause for 3 breaths before responding to criticism, or schedule creative work before checking email. The magic lies in the consistency. Just as teeth left unbrushed accumulate decay, unexamined days accumulate drift. The unshakable don't just move forward, they continually return to center. Because when you make peace with the day's stumbles and celebrate its quiet victories, you don't just end the day. You prepare the ground for a tomorrow that's already more aligned, more resilient, more unmistakably yours. Heraclitus stood by the river's edge 2,500 years ago and observed, no man ever steps in the same river twice. The water flows onward, the banks shift, and even the man himself is no longer quite the same. Yet how often do we cling to the shorelines of old identities, insisting we're still the person we were a decade ago, or even last year? Marcus Aurelius wrestled with this truth in his private writings. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. But what he was really asking was, who are you when you stop pretending to be who you once were? Consider the executive who built her career on relentless ambition, only to wake up one morning exhausted by the very hustle that once fueled her. Or the athlete whose identity was so welded to his sport that retirement felt like amputation. Rigid self-concepts don't just limit growth, they become fault lines under pressure. Like a tree that refuses to bend in the wind, the more tightly we cling to a single version of ourselves, the more brittle we become when life inevitably demands flexibility. The Stoics recognized this danger centuries before modern psychology coined the term identity foreclosure, the trap of defining yourself by roles that no longer fit. Take the lawyer who secretly yearns to teach but fears abandoning the prestige of his title. Every time he dismisses that whisper, he's not just rejecting a career change, he's denying the natural evolution of his own values. Seneca saw this clearly. Life is divided into 3 periods: past, present, and future. Of these, the present is short, the future uncertain, the past alone secure. But security in the past is an illusion. The unshakable don't mourn outdated versions of themselves. They honor them like old photographs, acknowledging their place in the album without trying to crawl back into the frame. Here's the practice. Picture yourself 5 years ago. Not just your circumstances, but your beliefs, your priorities, even your fears. Now ask, what parts of that person have you outgrown without realizing it? The need for constant validation, the assumption that success looks a certain way. The stories you told yourself about what you could or couldn't do, like a snake shedding skin. Growth isn't about discarding who you were, it's about making space for who you're becoming. Because the river keeps moving, whether you step into it or not, and the choice to flow with it isn't surrender, it's the ultimate act of self-trust. Seneca once observed that life is long if you know how to use it, not by adding years to your days, but by guarding the attention that gives those days meaning. Imagine your focus as currency in a world where every ping, scroll, and notification is a pickpocket stealing coins from your pocket. The Stoics understood this economy centuries before the digital age. Resilience isn't just about weathering storms, it's about choosing which wines deserve your sails. Epictetus put it bluntly: you are distracted, then you've already lost. Not lost time, not lost productivity, lost sovereignty over your own mind. Modern life operates like a casino for attention, flashing lights, endless slots of content, algorithms designed to keep you pulling the lever just one more time. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day, fracturing focus into fragments too small to build anything meaningful upon. Compare that to the deep, uninterrupted stretches Newton spent contemplating gravity or Darwin refining his theories. Their genius wasn't innate, it was cultivated in the fertile soil of sustained attention. The Unshakable recognize this. Every quick check of email, every reflexive social media refresh isn't just a minute lost, it's a betrayal of your capacity for depth. Consider the CEO who designates focus blocks where all notifications are silenced, or the writer who works on a disconnected device until noon. They're not just managing time, they're protecting the neural conditions where insight blooms. Studies show it takes 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after an interruption, meaning the myth of multitasking isn't just inefficient, it's cognitively bankrupt. The Stoics practiced a radical version of this through selective ignorance, deliberately avoiding trivial gossip, petty disputes, anything that couldn't withstand the question, will this matter in my last hour? So here's the challenge. What mental clutter could you declutter today? That news app that fuels anxiety without informing, the group chat that drains more energy than it returns. Even the habit of mentally rehearsing conversations that will never happen. Attention is the loom on which your life's fabric is woven. Every thread you allow to tangle it distorts the entire pattern. The Unshakable don't just avoid distraction. They cultivate a reverence for focus so deep that saying no to the trivial becomes second nature. Because when you stop scattering your attention like spare change, you discover something extraordinary. You've had the wealth to build the life you want all along. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who succeeded Zeno, didn't just teach philosophy, he lived it through the sweat of his brow. By night, he studied and wrote. By day, he hauled water and tended gardens, earning his keep through manual labor. When critics mocked him for this humble work, he responded with a lesson that cuts to the bone. I water my plants not because I must, but because it roots me in the present. This wasn't just about subsistence, it was a deliberate antidote to the paralysis of overthinking. His hands moved, and in that movement, his mind found clarity. The modern world has turned this wisdom on its head. We've replaced physical toil with endless mental churn, mistaking the spinning of our wheels for progress. Analysis paralysis isn't just a productivity killer. It's a thief of peace, convincing us that if we just think harder, longer, more obsessively, the perfect solution will materialize. But life doesn't reward the most intricate plans, it rewards decisive motion. Marcus Aurelius observed this in nature's relentless rhythm. Observe how all things are continually being born of change. The cosmos itself is but a river of becoming. The river doesn't pause to debate its course. It flows, adjusts, and carves canyons through sheer persistence. Human hesitation, by contrast, creates its own obstacles. Picture someone stuck in a gym parking lot, scrolling through workout tutorials instead of stepping inside. They're researching optimal protein timing while their muscles atrophy from inaction. The irony, any imperfect workout would serve them better than the flawless routine they never start. Action isn't the enemy of thought, it's its necessary counterpart. Like a sculptor who must eventually put chisel to marble, we honor our ideas by testing them in the real world. The entrepreneur who launches a minimum viable product learns more in a week than the perfectionist does in a year of spreadsheets. The writer who drafts one messy page accumulates more wisdom than the one waiting for inspiration to strike. Even small motions, a 5-minute walk when overwhelmed, jotting down the first sentence of a daunting email, break the spell of stagnation. So ask yourself, what overthinking loop could you disrupt with a single act right now? That project you've been researching for months, the conversation you've rehearsed in your head but avoided in reality. Movement doesn't just propel you forward, it reveals which fears were illusions all along. Because the unshakable understand a truth too few admit. Clarity doesn't precede action, it follows it. Unshakability isn't a trait you're born with, it's a skill forged in the quiet, consistent moments of everyday life. Like a blacksmith shaping steel, each deliberate ritual, each morning reflection, each pause before reacting, each voluntary step into discomfort hammers another layer of resilience into your character. The Stoics didn't wake up unbreakable. They built their fortitude brick by brick, day after day, through practices so simple they are often overlooked. Morning reflection roots you in purpose before the world's chaos begins. Evening review turns experience into wisdom. Controlled perception strips adversity of its power by asking, what is this really? And voluntary hardship, those small, self-imposed challenges, acts as a vaccine against life's inevitable larger doses of discomfort. Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." Not a mountain, not a masterpiece, and certainly not an unshakable mind. The oak tree that withstands the storm grew from a single acorn watered daily. The same applies to your resilience. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Start with one ritual, just one. Maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling before breakfast, or a cold shower to practice embracing discomfort. Perhaps it's pausing to question your first reaction when frustration flares. These aren't grand gestures, but they're the seeds of something far greater. So here's the invitation. Which of these practices speaks to you right now? Is it the clarity of morning reflection, the grounding power of negative visualization, or the freedom that comes with discerning what's truly yours to control? Share it below because the journey to becoming unshakable isn't meant to be walked alone. Your choice might inspire someone else to take their first step. And remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress, one day, one ritual, one small victory at a time. The path to unshakability isn't a sprint, it's a lifelong marathon. And every step